Now we will take what we've learned about sharps and flats and the names of different keys and the keyboard, and we'll understand how they relate together to the creation of the major scale. Since there are specific notes on the keyboard that are either whole steps or half steps apart, combined they create a series of whole steps and half steps that constitute what is called a scale. Today we're going to learn about the major scale, which is the most common scale to Western civilization music. It comprises of a series of whole steps, which we'll represent with a W, whole step, and half steps, which we'll use an H to represent. Now, you'll recall from our earlier discussion that we already established that there is a half step between E and F and between B and C. And since there are black notes between C and D, it's a whole step. There's a black note between D and E, so that gets a whole step. There's a black note between F and G, so that's a whole step. There's a black note between G and A, which is a whole step. There's also another black note between A and B, which is a whole step. Together, this sequence of whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half constitutes what is known as the major scale. That specific sequence of half steps and whole steps characterizes any major scale, regardless of which note you start on. Let's take C, for example. If I start on C and I go a whole step, that will take me to D, and another whole step will take me to E, and now I need a half step, which will take me to F. Another whole step will take me to G, another whole step will take me to A, another whole step will take me to B, and then finally the last half step will take me back to C. The major scale sounds like this. And it is that specific sequence of whole steps and half steps that make up the major scale. There's another way to remember, since there are a lot of half steps and whole steps to remember here. Sometimes it's helpful if we take it into two groups. If the first half of the scale and the second half of the scale, if we look at them, they're exactly the same. Whole, whole, half. Whole, whole, half. They're joined in the middle by a single whole step. Typically that makes it a little bit easier for us to remember the entire sequence. The first half, whole, whole, half. The last half, whole, whole, half. And those two groups of four notes are separated by one whole step in the middle. If we can remember that sequence, then we can transfer this same sequence to any starting pitch, and we will know which sharps or which flats we will need to add in order to complete the major scale.